Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Shannon Port. I'm the Associate Dean of the Library at Elgin Community College and the current Vice President of IACRL. There we go. I'll get it right. And so thank you for coming to this presentation. So the focus of the presentation today is kickstarting with OER with grant funding, or better yet, and I love this title, I've been named project manager / director. What does that mean? So we're going to be talking from a couple different perspectives of people who have been through OER projects, as well as we've got someone here to deal with the grant perspective. And then we have some exciting news at the end from the awards committee to kick off that as well. So I'm going to quick introduce our speakers. So we've got Kim Hale is the Academic Engagement Librarian at Columbia College Chicago Library. She coordinates library OER initiatives and is a member of the Carly Open Education Resources Committee. She also serves as Academic Library Representative for the Illinois State Library Advisory Committee. Dr. Lauren Kosrow, hopefully I said that right, currently serves as the Digital Content and Open Access Librarian at the College of DuPage and co-chair of the college's OER Steering Committee. In this role, she facilitates the faculty support grant program and provides leadership for the college's textbook affordability initiatives. This year, she is serving as co-chair of Carly's OER committee. Daniel Matthews is the digital services librarian at Moraine Valley Community College. He works with students on all kinds of media creation, including podcasting, video making, and 3D printing. He is the co-chair of the Affordable Course Materials Committee at Moraine Valley and supports and facilitates campus cost-saving efforts for students. He has been a member of IACRL since 2018 and has served on the conference and continuing ed committee and executive board. And like I said, he's part of the awards committee for IACRL. Cathy Mayer is the Director of Grants Research and Development at Elgin Community College and is driven to synthesize information and resources to educate and equip stakeholders. A strong communicator and collaborator, Cathy draws upon an MBA in 15 years plus as an educator and library administrator to conduct needs analysis and problem solving. Adept at working with multiple teams and fostering relationships with internal and external stakeholders, she approaches grant development as an organizational strategic planning and culture building process. So thank you all. So we're going to start this out as just a very basic discussion. So if people have questions, please feel free to ask them as we go along. But what I'm going to do is first, and I don't know who wants to go first, but I would like to start talking about OER experiences, either tips or tricks or things that you've learned along the way to make this process easier. If anybody wants to start out with what OER is, to make sure those of us, those as our participants know what OER is, just so we're all starting at the same groundwork, that would be great too. So who wants to start?
I can jump in here. So yeah, just to share a little bit about OER and then my kind of personal work with OER. So open educational resources are any kind of course material or learning resources that are free to the user, but also have a license associated with it that allow users to widely share, remix, reuse, and adapt those materials. So leveraging Creative Commons licenses, those materials are free to students, but then also faculty members have the ability to customize and curate those materials for their courses. So through adapting, or even creating open educational resources, we kind of lower those financial barriers for students and provide equal access to those course materials on day one of the course. So have huge implications in terms of pedagogical impact, but as well as again, just lowering those financial barriers for students and ensuring that all of our students have access to those course materials on day one. So again, just to provide a little bit more context of my experience, I've been working in the OER space for almost 10 years. So I kind of put in two different experiences that may be helpful for those as we kind of dig into our discussion and have conversation. Originally I was doing this work at a peer institution, and I was involved in starting the OER initiative on that campus. So there's no infrastructure. It was not part of my regular job duties, right? It was something that I was interested in and passionate about through my work at the reference desk and chatting with students who did not have the ability to purchase their textbooks and were looking to gain access. So through that work and those personal conversations, became really interested in OER and the ability to provide students with free access to materials. So I started an OER kind of program on campus, providing professional development for faculty, supporting faculty in learning about OER, but then adopting OER for their courses. And over a period of number of years, we saved students over $1 million through that initiative, with really, again, no kind of formal structure or institutional support in that area. It was just kind of through word of mouth and supporting students. Then, I became so interested, I wanted it to be more of my full-time job. So when this opportunity at College of DuPage opened up, I've been here for about 18 months. I moved into this role. Now, when I moved into this role, it was an existing program. So the program that has been running now for 5 years at College of DuPage, and is a well-established, funded, sustainable initiative. So kind of moved into a space where, my position as a tenure track librarian was hired to focus on open educational resources and supporting textbook affordability. We have a standing operational budget line that supports this initiative, and there's a well-established faculty support grant program to provide faculty with support for adapting, and creating open educational resources. So I'll pause there, but just to share, I share that context because I do have experience in both spaces. So as we open up, again, conversation and questions, I can speak from both areas, from starting an initiative on a campus to running a kind of established program. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to some of my co-panelists.
So I might just jump in and add from a grant development, grant writing perspective. I do have an MLIS, and I have been in OER conversations and spaces. And so in my instance, I do come with knowledge that allows me to jump into writing a grant. But your institution, that may not be the case. So as you think about conversations that you've had with your faculty, and as you're explaining and defining and giving examples of what OER can look like or has looked like, that can really help make meaning for the folks that are helping to develop your grant, to really make a strong grant proposal put together. You want to make sure that there is no question when someone picks up the definition of what you're doing. And so if there's anything that feels fuzzy, or if the people that you're talking to don't understand what you're saying, that's a really good indication that it's a time to slow down and figure out, okay, we as librarians may be using librarian speak that makes sense to us, but it's not making sense to our stakeholders. And if it's not making sense to our stakeholders locally, it's not necessarily going to make sense to the folks that are getting our grant. So what else do we need to do?
I guess that means I'm next. Hi, everyone. My name is Kim Hale. I'm the Academic Engagement Librarian at Columbia College, Chicago. And I come here today as the current project director for our SCORES grant. So we we knew of interest on campus that there was one department that was interested in changing their current textbook, which was developed by the department in a textbook that students paid for, but they wanted to make that into an open educational resources, so it'd be free. So that was the beginning of our movement towards OER in terms of being an actual author or from the college. So we're starting from the very beginning of learning how to take an existing textbook, and turn it into an open educational resources book that can be used by not only our students. In fact, it will be the major textbook for our first year writing courses in our English and creative writing department. And so every student that comes through those classes will be using this book when it is completed. And we are so happy to be a part of that process. And the grant, getting the grant was a big step for us, to our administration, to know that we can do this and we can be a part of the open educational resources wide range of materials available for students. And I think our hope, well, at least my hope is that more faculty will start learning more about OER. Some know and have no idea, some aren't interested, and some are kind of, in between those points. So I'm hopeful that our work will encourage more faculty to not only use OER in terms of textbook affordability, but also to create their own. We have a very creative arts institution, and a lot of the arts aren't well represented in OER. And so I hope that someday that we'll have faculty on our campus that will do that. But yeah, my reason today for being here is as a project director.
Thank you. And this is a pan or a question for everyone, but I'm curious, like a question I know I've had in my institution is, how do you get faculty excited about OER? It does take a lot of work. We understand there's a lot of time, and compensation can be, a concern, which we understand. And especially if you're dealing with unions and whatnot and that kind of stuff, we understand that that can be a more complicated process. But how do you find faculty that are excited about it, or how do you get them excited about it so they're open to the idea of OER and the work that it involves?
I can jump in. Great question, Shannon. And in both institutions where I've done this work, one of the very first steps that we did was send out a faculty survey to kind of gauge interest in, but also awareness and awareness of, and faculty who were already engaged in this work, right? OER is not necessarily new, right, in the educational space at this point. And so one of the first things I would recommend is to send out a faculty survey, identifying or asking faculty to kind of gauge their awareness of OER, where they are, and kind of learning about or hearing about OER from professional conferences or literature or, webinars, things like that. And then identifying who potentially on your campus is already engaged in this work, because I can almost guarantee on all of our campuses, there are faculty who are already doing this work. It may be hidden, right? It may not be compensated, all those things, but no one may know about it. But in both instances, we discovered faculty who had already authored their own textbooks, like had already written their own manuals, right? Had already been engaged in this space. So a faculty survey can do a great job in discovering the good work that's already being done, but also to identify the people who are interested and who will be early adopters for you. Those are key constituents and stakeholders to partner with. Because really the best champions of this work are faculty talking to other faculty. So if you can identify the work that's already being done and partner with those faculty to share their experiences, right? To share that, the stories of students in the classroom who can't afford to purchase the textbook, and, all faculty have those experiences of a student who's falling behind because they weren't able to access the textbook on day one, sharing those stories of the financial burdens and the impact on students. So having that conversation, faculty to faculty, but also, like I mentioned, the benefits of OER and adopting OER in your classroom. So again, that ability to customize, to curate, to make sure that those course materials are aligned really well with your course outcomes. Those are all conversations that faculty can have with other faculty and are really powerful conversations. So I would encourage you, something like a survey, identify those early adopters, identify people who will pretty quickly be interested in doing this work. And that becomes a snowball effect, right? To get those early adopters to start tracking student savings. Those can be really impactful numbers. How much those faculty, those early adopters are saving students by switching to free OER material. Those numbers can add up really fast semester over semester. And those numbers are really impactful when we're talking about key stakeholders like senior academic officers, board of trustees, right? People who are really invested in student success, but who also have the ability to support these initiatives. So those student saving numbers and stories of faculty can be really, really important as first steps towards building these initiatives. I have more to say on the compensation piece, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about, is grant funding and other ways to build out that support. But I will turn it over and we can dive in a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Lauren, you hit the nail on every point that you made. We have also done surveys with some of our faculty, and it's like the bell curve. There are some that have no interest. There's some that I don't know, I'm interested. And then there are some that they're already in it and we had no idea. So we have attempted to get the word out about OER through faculty development days. We've had programs to talk about what OER are. And we've also, sounds so funny. That's something that we want to continue to do, but we also want to talk about inclusive access and the other types of textbooks that the print textbooks and open access and other types of accesses that you have to pay for. And so I think oftentimes that the vendors will come onto our campuses and promote to students and promote to faculty, administrators, but they don't ever talk to the library. And there's a reason why, of course, but because they may not know to do that, or they may say, well, what about OER? But anyway, it is of interest on our campus, and we're trying to engage more faculty to learn more about what OER is and how it can help their students save money, and also provide them an opportunity if they want to create or remix or have other ways of working with OER, that they can include their students as part of that process. And that's what really excites me, is that students can be the participants in their own education by working with faculty who are making or remixing current OER materials or creating their own. So I'll pass it on to Cathy.
So I think I might actually have a hopefully nice bridge between what we've been talking about and where we're heading with compensation. Kim, I really appreciate your point about helping faculty think creatively and imagine broadly. Understandably, if we come, or if you as librarians or I as a grants development person come and say, OER is the solution, we are expecting this grant to solve every one of your problems and give all students access. That's unrealistic, right? And faculty are going to understandably push back against that. And so it's really important that we offer and frame these things as a possibility. And we also acknowledge where there might be weaknesses or where there isn't going to be a fit for particular departments, or because of certain compensation models or institutional kind of politics, whatever might be happening. It's not a fit everywhere. And really being able to name and recognize, and with candor, just own where we are at as an institution, is what I think is the greatest value in doing this kind of work as a grants piece, because ultimately it's being able to figure out where are we and where could this grant take us, but ultimately where do we want to be institutionally as a whole, not just because there's grant funding, but because this is something that's important to us, to our students as an institution. So thinking about that and how all of this exists, not just because there is a grant or grants available. I know, Lauren, you had mentioned the compensation piece being a challenge. Is this a good time to kind of jump into some of the nitty-gritty of figuring out compensation and how that ties into a budget?
Yeah, absolutely. I first and foremost want to say that, I believe this work can be done without the compensation piece, but it's also a very important part of this conversation, right? I do believe that there is a point in which there are early adopters who are going to be excited. They're going to catch the vision, right? They're going to see the benefits and are going to do this work. And like I said, on many of our campuses, it may already be happening. But I do think there is a point, right, that your growth is going to hit a point where the compensation piece needs to become a part for this to be a sustainable structure on campus. So I don't want to dissuade anyone from diving in if you're interested in this work. I think it is, really possible to make some really good progress without all of those pieces in place. But it comes to a point where it's a very important part of this conversation. So that being said, I think knowing your campus context and the important conversations that need to happen in your specific location is really important. So who are the key players, right? Who are maybe who you need to get a meeting with, right? Or to be able to demonstrate that this is initiative that is something you want to pursue on your campus is really important. And that can lead to internal funding, right? But a really great way of demonstrating the value of open resources is through grant funding, obviously, right? And so just a couple pieces to note on that if you are interested in, we're going to talk more about specific opportunities, but if you're interested in pursuing grant funding to support, incentivize faculty to do this work. On my current institution at College of DuPage, we support faculty through both stipends and course release time. So internally, our faculty support grant program, we have different projects, whether it's a range from either straight adoption all the way through creation. So different amounts that are associated with a variety of different work. And then we also offer course reassigned time. So faculty are able to, not teach a course in order to engage in this work and are supported in that way as well. So those are two ways that we support faculty. And something I would encourage, if you are interested in pursuing setting up some kind of faculty grant program or applying for an external grant to support faculty, is to have conversations early on if you're not aware of how faculty are currently being compensated for this kind of work, right? Whether it is curriculum development, right? Whether it is, leading other initiatives on campus, in some way, shape, or form, right? We're all compensating faculty for varieties of efforts across campus. So figuring out what those are and kind of what you can tie this to on your campus. So not having it be totally external to any other process that's happening on campus, but identifying how faculty are currently being compensated for additional work and what you can kind of tie this to. So getting those kinds of like dollar amounts or kind of pay structures of faculty that adhere to, your collective bargaining agreements, right, and contract and all of those things can be really helpful in determining how much grant support you might need, how to structure those projects, how to ensure that compensation is relative across projects. So that can be a really helpful piece before applying for a grant to kind of do that internal investigation and tie it to that kind of work that's already being done at your institution.
Did anybody else have anything to add on that point? Thank you very much, Lauren and Cathy. And
I guess the one thing that I might add to what Lauren has shared is, yes, do the internal research, ask the questions. Also consider your context and what allies you might have in this work. It may not just be the library that can help lead and facilitate some of these conversations. Again, we've talked about how faculty champions can help move things forward, but there might be other administrators, or there might be someone in just another avenue of the institution that has a heart for this work or has done similar compensation tied to other projects that would be a really key stakeholder to talk to that might enable you to kind of cut through some of the milieu to be able to get to the heart of what you need to put together a strong proposal.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Kim.
Have had a couple of department chairs have indicated interest in OER. We know that there are some faculty that are doing it on their own, but we have had two faculty members in our college that are very interested in OER. And in fact, one of them is our chair of English and Creative Writing, and she got us started with interest. Actually, her library liaison told us about it, as well as another faculty member was a department chair. And her department is science and math, and they are applying for the Illinois State Library grant. Mm-hmm. So the grant piece is very important for us, but because finances are an issue with our institution right now. So at any time that we can find funding to support our faculty and our students and the institution, that makes sense for us to do and that we can do, we will make an effort to at least explore, research, and determine whether or not we can do that. And so that's kind of our approach at this time. Hopefully down the line, there will be funding more widely available and more interest. We're trying to continue to drum up interest because students are hurting, and we want to help them financially, and however we can with the OER. And the more that they know about it, because some of them don't know about it, and so the more that we can get that message out, hopefully we can help the faculty and the students. And one thing I wanted to make mention, I think we all know this, is that we're not asking faculty to change everything or the materials that they are using, because sometimes what they're using is the best available, and we want their selections and how they teach their courses is theirs alone. We are just providing opportunities to look for other things that may save some money for their students. So
Thank you, Kim. And I also want to put out, I think that's a very important point, and I think Lauren might have also touched on this too, is that, not only do you have the thing about, a lot of the students don't even know what OER means. I was just in a discussion yesterday about some of the statistics we had from getting about affordable textbooks and that kind of stuff. And it was funny, a librarian put out a question to a panel of students about, well, are you using any open education resources? And the students had no idea. So as much as they want to have things that are free and that kind of stuff, they're also just starting to learn about this topic as well. Some may be well-versed, but some may not be, and it's a great support system, for starting these projects. But I think also the other thing is understand that OER can mean a lot of different things. It's not just a brand new textbook. It could be, a quiz bank. It could be different kinds of ancillaries. It could be, like we were talking about, remix and update. It could be something that you already have that, again, you either need to refresh just a little bit or refresh a whole lot, either way. So there's a lot of flexibility in what an OER can be. And sometimes it doesn't have to be these huge major projects, which can seem scary, right? It can be some of these smaller projects. And again, if somebody wants to have a big giant project, I'm sure that that's a thing too. But just in terms of, options and that kind of stuff, I think it's also important to not only, respect the academic freedom like Kimberly had talked about, but also, and letting the faculty know that really they're the driver of what this project is for their own class. Like we've been talking about, like what's best for them, but maybe there's another little piece that could be made for them that could make things easier overall, but still fits within the OER space. So thank you for that. So here's a question for you guys. In terms of past projects that you've done or current projects that you're doing, what are some tips and tricks that you either were the most surprised at as you were going through that you'd like to share?
Can I add one kind of
Yes.
question? And this is as much for my personal development and growth now on the grant side of things. For those of you that have done projects or maybe have written proposals, what now on the back side that you wrote into the proposal turned out to not make sense or was super critical, right? What did you think was going to happen that didn't happen? Or what do you wish you would have known that you would have included up front?
Fair. Thank you.
well, I guess I could jump in with this, and this in my notes was that we had a situation last semester where our part-time faculty went on strike for 6 weeks,
Oh,
and no one was ever going to know that. But it made us, and this was at the point where editing was going on, and we couldn't, the ability for us to reach out to the department chairs on our team, as well as the full-time faculty on our team, was limited. And we couldn't approach the part-time faculty authors who were at the editing process or finishing up the editing. So that didn't happen. So what happened was that five of my library colleagues stepped in and they did the editing. And this was something that was not anticipated for them. They didn't expect to have to do this. I mean, they were doing the things that they were expecting to do, but this was not one of those. And without their help and input, it wouldn't have gone as well as it did. And so I appreciate that. That's really the example of teamwork at work. But yeah, that was something that wouldn't have expected. But we were able to rebound and do what we needed to do. And so now we're back on track.
Oh, good.
I'll pick up on that theme of teamwork a little bit. I have found this work to be highly relational. And so in building those relationships with faculty who are interested in doing this work, again, key partners in adapting, creating OER. And so, going to department meetings, right, or building those relationships with faculty who are interested in doing this work can be really helpful to have that community to tap when you do have like a grant application, right, to say, okay, now is the time to kind of build on that project that we've been talking about, or that I know that you're interested in doing. Also, as you engage in this work, if it's your, first couple projects, or if you're scaling, it starts to touch on a lot of different areas within an institution, right? Being able to have partners in maybe your Center for Access and Accommodations, right, to ensure the accessibility of your end product, whether that is a lab manual, whether that is a full textbook, right? Maybe you're just making edits or you're customizing a textbook for a course, ensuring that end product is accessible for all of our students. It starts to touch on kind of departments, right, and how you scale those efforts within a department. So this theme of teamwork is really important, both within the academic department, but then also with the different areas that support. So, whoever supports your learning management system, right, can be a critical piece of this work as well. Maybe perhaps instructional designers or bringing in learning technologists as you do this work. So building out your team, right, of people to support this work can be really, really important and impactful, both for growing an initiative on campus and also as you are looking to apply for grant funding to ensure that you have the support to make sure that these projects are successful.
I think the only piece that I would add is, as you sit down to do a grant, don't assume that one person is going to be able to pull this all together and hit send. It's really vital to have all of the different stakeholders get a chance to review what's being proposed and understand how you're moving forward. Because there's nothing more problematic than successfully obtaining a grant, but then realizing the way that it was written or proposed isn't actually realistic for the situation in which an institution finds itself. And so having those open relational discussions and having hard conversations ahead of time about topics that folks feel uncertain about is truly vital at the stage of development, because after the fact, you can really undo a lot of good work and goodwill, not only around a grant, but around the process that you're trying to move forward institutionally, if everyone hasn't been able to move forward together in communicating.
I'd like to add with what Cathy just said, and that is that the most important part at the beginning and during the life of the grant is homework, and continually reviewing what you said you were going to do, what you've done, what you have to do, what has changed, and work with your team in order to have those conversations. Communication is key, and it drives everything else. But yeah, knowing the grant and working with your grant office, which is essential, because you might want to be applying for a grant that you're not qualified for or not eligible for, because there are requirements that talk about eligibility. And so all those conversations need to be had.
I'll just add too, as you're thinking about a grant application, again, heavily relying on your local context and what this looks like at your institution. But compensating and supporting faculty is going to be, a key cornerstone of this work. But also for you and your context, what are the other parts of this process that you might want to build out? You may be interested in, subscribing to or using grant funds for some kind of digital publishing platform, right? If, using LibreText through, some of the state funding, or it could be a different digital publishing platform. So starting to build that infrastructure out. It could be starting to build out your peer review or proofreading components of OER. So that, using grant funding to kind of build that out, like, discovering what it looks like to compensate peer reviewers or to, leverage copywriting, proofreading services for your authors. So thinking about those other pieces that you might want to build out with these kinds of funds as well can be really helpful.
And to add to what Lauren's saying, I think one of the beauties of being in an Illinois academic library is that we view our students collectively as Illinois students, Columbia College students and College of DuPage students and Elgin Community College students and Elmhurst students, and the list goes on, are all Carly students. And so just like we think of our students collectively, even though grant opportunities are often competitive, and yes, the people on this call are going to be competing with one another once applications are turned in, it is in the best interests of all of our students and all of us collectively to see this work move forward strategically, and therefore engaging with one another and understanding, all right, why might College of DuPage have contextually chosen to pay, copyright in this way or pay editors in that way? It may not make sense at ECC to just lift and cookie cutter copy exactly what they're doing. But if we can see what they do and understand the context of what they do and understand the context of what's happening with Kim's team at Columbia and understand the context of what's happening at the University of Illinois, we're going to, as a whole, come to clear understandings of how to put together great applications for grants. But we're also going to come to clear understandings of how to advocate to the Illinois State Library, to the Department of Education federally, as to what we actually need to make this work sustainable. And so even if it's frustrating to put in a grant application and not be successful, understand that the work that you're doing as a professional, engaging in this conversation and opening up to others around you and understanding this more holistically, not only in your context, but in the context broadly, we're advocating and doing really beautiful equity and inclusion work as part of developing grants.
Thank you. So kind of going off what Lauren had mentioned, are there any other tools or services that you guys have found that can help with OER initiatives?
Define tools.
It can be anything you want. Like Lauren happened to mention, getting support for proofreading, like a proofreading service, but it can be anything, but things that you found has helped the OER process as you've gone along that somebody might not be aware of or even think of.
Well, if we're talking proofreading, our director, Joe Cates, journalist, and did, along with another faculty, a faculty member in the science and math department, they proofread our authoring culture. And they're because of their intelligence and their diligence in making sure that they wanted to get things right, it's going to make the book even better.
Awesome.
So I'll mention, in addition to kind of the compensation structure that we've set up for faculty, another key piece of scaling this work was our subscription to Pressbook. So that is our digital publishing platform and serves as kind of our repository for open educational resources that are created here at COD or adapted or modified in some way. So that was also a key piece of creating a repository and creating a digital publishing platform for our authors to use. So mention that because that was a key piece for us here in scaling our initiative, is to have that institutional digital publishing platform to assist with our authors in creating projects, adapting OER, and customizing content to fit their needs. So yeah, that was a big one. And actually we the proofreading piece was one that we were awarded one of the SCORES grants. And so that was something that we built out and identified as kind of scaling our digital publishing workflows. And that was one of those pieces, was to build into our budget compensation for proofreading and to identify individuals within the institution and ways that we could incorporate that into our workflow for our original text. So that was also something. So again, to mention that, and we're kind of interested in exploring in the peer review piece now. So that's something that we're starting to build on, is that. Another thing that you might want to consider, this was internally, but we identified a faculty member to serve as our OER liaison. So just, kind of identifying a person who is, disciplined faculty to kind of help champion and advocate for these efforts. That has been a really key role. They were someone who is established as an OER author, has worked on these projects. So it was really helpful to have support from librarians, but also to have another faculty member who had done the work, could kind of coach faculty through applications, through projects, to kind of be a thought partner and someone that faculty could go to ask questions. So that was another role that has been really helpful for us in building our initiative on campus. So again, something else to think about as you're thinking about potential things to support with grant funding.
Great, thank you, Lauren. We got a question submitted, so I'm going to read it out loud. Is there a central place to find public OER that is available for remix/adaptation? Or are they mostly housed internally to institutions? Wondering about this quote unquote network effect idea. The more OER there is, therefore the more OER is used, and so on.
Yeah, what a great question. The answer is absolutely. I wouldn't say there's one central place. There are lots of places. So lots of OER repositories where some are geared towards entire open textbooks, but then some are geared as just kind of open repositories where you can find everything from textbooks to worksheets to slide decks to, quiz question banks, lab manuals, all types of resources. So you can, kind of start small in terms of maybe ancillaries for a particular course, or just adopting, a handout or a worksheet or a lab, all the way up through full kind of open textbooks. So a great place to start if you're interested is the Open Illinois Hub on the OER Commons. That's a great place to start. Those are, and I can pop the link into the chat, but those are OER that have been that are held by or created by Illinois institutions. So that can be a great place to see what kind of your peers across the state are using. So the Open Illinois Hub I would highly recommend, but also OER Commons, Open Textbook Library, OpenStax for full textbooks. So yeah, a lot of great places where you could start to identify potential open resources. Thanks, Daniel. So the other thing I will share too is something else to potentially think about is for funding is professional development, whether that's for, a course, for librarians to engage in professional development, or to learn more and just be, engage in continued professional development around OER, whether that's for faculty to attend conferences, right, or to attend courses, things like that. Professional development might be another key piece for your initiative at your institution.
And I want to say too, to jump in on that, like one of the things that also especially for those libraries that just haven't really touched this, if you have access to LibGuides and that kind of stuff, please don't hesitate to look at that, because there's a lot of libraries who have very, very, very strong LibGuides about this and can also act as jumping off points. Not only, and like I said, obviously the library or the Illinois libraries may have more of an Illinois focus of those different options that Lauren and others have mentioned in the chat and whatnot. But, you know, also there is a lot of resources out there from a lot of institutions that are very useful. I know when ECC was first looking at that, that's kind of what we did. And again, we're still in the beginning parts of this, but I will say a lot of those sites, along with a lot of the ones that others have mentioned as well, was really helpful.
I would just also jump in and say, as I've gotten into the world of grants, OER is weaving its way through lots of different entities. Department of Labor grants that folks are submitting are requiring OER resources to be generated. So anything that's created for someone that's getting a Department of Labor grant is now mandated to be an OER resource. So even though yes, there are a plethora of resources in existence, there are more that are coming as there is broader recognition of the value of sharing resources.
Yeah, and thank you everyone on the chat that's sharing resources. Are there any questions from the participants? Any more questions? I want to make sure we give time to those. Thank you, Divya, for the question. Give a little bit of time. Okay, so for ChemEd, the Green Chemistry Teaching and Learning Community is the building of, Library of Green Chemistry OER. That's cool. All right. I'm just reading the comments as we're seeing if we get any questions or any more. Well, while people are thinking about questions, I want to invite Dan back to talk about another OER grant opportunity. He's here. There he is.
Yep, I'm here. I'm just getting my links in order.
No, thank you. And you should be able to share.
Awesome. So we got to get a mouse.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so I just want to share with you about the IACRL OER Campus Kickstart Award for Growing Illinois OER Programs. So I'm hoping that as you've, let me take a step back. First, thank you, Lauren, Cathy, and Kim, and Shannon for sharing your expertise and your insight on OER. There's so much work happening in Illinois, and you all are doing such great work and making lots of things happen. So thank you. And hopefully I can piggyback off of this excellent conversation and perspective to get you all interested as attendees of this event in the OER Campus Kickstart Award. So this award is in its second year, so we're really excited to be able to offer this again. Last year, we had $2,500 through ILA to offer awards to people who are trying to get things moving with OER on their campus. So the award is intended to cater to people who have maybe not the institutional support or infrastructure to really pursue a large grant opportunity, but is a way for people to get access to some funding to provide incentive to faculty members to get them to start doing this work, and hopefully getting that snowball effect, getting some bring some legitimacy to these efforts on their institution by saying, we got an award, we got money, and we did it. So like now we can rah-rah about like the successful implementation of an OER grant. So that's the hope of the award. So some of the logistics about it, we are looking for applications by March 31st. As with every call for applications, we will extend as needed. So if you are interested and aren't yet don't yet have your application ready by March 31st, just reach out and let us know that you want to apply. We want to give this money away. We want to give people the opportunity to participate in OER. An embarrassment of riches, we have twice as much money this year. So we are looking for more applications to come through. So we have $5,000 this year to give away. So let me talk a little bit about what an individual award might look like. So I'm going to scroll through just the call and kind of help remind myself and give you an opportunity to kind of look at the website. But again, we've got $5,000 this year. We are looking to give away $500 awards. We're looking for to award 10 applications with $500. And that $500 is really flexible in how it can be implemented. It is intended as whatever you need to kind of provide that incentive. So if if you want to just give $500 to a faculty member to implement an OER project, that's totally fine. If you want to split it between a faculty member and a librarian to kind of work together and put together a project and implement in a class, that's fine. If there are supplies or materials that fit within that amount, that's also an appropriate use. So we want to make sure that it is something that is helpful and not super restrictive on how this money can be most effective for you as somebody trying to get an OER project started. We do ask that everybody have a librarian and faculty collaboration team. So we want to make sure that the librarians are still involved and are helping provide guidance and expertise for the project. So we're asking you to identify a faculty member and a librarian partnership that will work together in the grant, or in the award, excuse me. Faculty can adapt, remix, or create OER. So again, this amount of money may not be enough to get somebody to fully write their textbook, but there are definite opportunities for adoption and adapting, remixing, those kinds of things. We are asking people who are awarded to present and share about their experiences in programs like this, to talk about the successes and the hurdles that they had to overcome to get these things in place, so that we can start sharing, or not start, but continue to share and talk about how we can all participate and do this type of work. We'll be asking people to collect some basic data about ABC and drop withdrawal incomplete rates in their classes, so that we can start getting a picture of like how this is impacting student success. But also like whatever other data is important to you and your institution to demonstrate success, we are asking you to think about gathering that as well. Cost savings data is also always really appreciated. It's a number that doesn't always indicate success, but is something that people really understand, is that cost savings metric. I want to make sure. As far as that presentation is concerned, ILA is also offering awardees a one-day registration for ILA to do a presentation at the annual conference. So we don't want to feel like, here's your award, now pay to come and present and talk about it. We want to provide that as an avenue for people who receive the award to have an opportunity to talk about it at ILA and present their awesome projects that they're working through. We again are prioritizing people that are trying to grow their programs. So we are looking at small institution size based on FTE, minority serving institutions. We are interested in how a financial incentive can help set a precedent for more OER programming. So if you can talk about how your administration has said things like, well, we don't really have the money to support you, so we don't know what this would look like even. So being able to say, if we got this money, we could implement this program and demonstrate to our administration the value of OER, those kinds of things. And we also are prioritizing campuses with newly established, unsupported, or non-existent OER efforts. So again, those are the things that will give applications priority. Please apply, even if you feel like you're maybe not hitting all of these marks. We want to give this money away. We want to demonstrate that people are interested. We want to prioritize people that don't have other avenues necessarily to participate in larger OER funding opportunities. But we're giving this money away. So please apply if you're a larger institution. If you've had a little bit of experience with OER and could use, another boost, you're trying to revitalize a program that has gotten a start, and maybe you need something to happen to get people interested again. All of those things are valid. We just want to make sure that people that don't have other opportunities are also able to participate. Another thing that I want to mention, which is a change for this year, is that we've asked faculty to say that they will run these courses and use these materials in 2 semesters. following receiving the grant funding. And we acknowledge that that doesn't always work for adjunct faculty, and adjunct faculty are another vital piece of getting participation and growth in OER. So if you are an adjunct faculty and you are unsure of what your class schedule might be, just to talk a little bit about what you anticipate and when you expect that you'll be able to teach and run the courses that you identified to use for this program. So that is a change. We want to try to, again, make it as accessible and flexible to fit the needs of people that are interested in doing OER programming. So I've talked a lot. The website is up, and I will throw a link to the application and the call in the chat, and you can read all the details. And please reach out to me or to Sarah McCone-Chase to ask questions or get involved and get some support throughout the application process. Okay, thank you.
Daniel, we had a real quick question for you. Is this open to both private and public institutions?
Yes.
Okay, Zach, hopefully that answered your question. We had another question, so thank you very much for that, Daniel, and I hope everybody takes advantage of it. Cathy did answer this, so I'm not going to read her entire answer, but Zach did ask another question. What are some quick tips that you can provide to someone that would be a project manager on a grant application for the first time? Been on the other side of the grant process, but this is a different approach for me. So looking for any tips on managing a project and a project team. I can quick read Cathy's answer because I think it was pretty good. Zach, as Kim noted, do your homework. Anything in an application narrative or budget that makes a reviewer think, what does that mean / entail, is a point where you want to dig into more details and more clearly articulate a plan of action. To do this, don't start with a focus on word count limits, but rather capture all the things you and / other collaborating on a grant can think of as relevant. It's always easier to organize information once it's down on paper rather than living in the heads of separate grant teams developing a grant. Okay, and then it's asked, does this help? Yeah, Kimberly, go ahead and answer.
I just wanted to answer, Zach. I had a whole presentation just on that topic, but we went into discussion mode, which is great. So I'm happy to talk with you if you'd like. I'll put my email address in the chat, and I'd be happy to talk to you anytime.
I'll just jump into saying, I think I already mentioned that I find this work to be highly relational. Grant management and project management, I find the same. I find I work in spreadsheets, and so tracking interactions with faculty. Last time I made contact, regular Zoom meetings, even if it's just for 10-15 minutes to check in, I find they find it helpful to kind of have that accountability piece. We set up a timeline and expectations ahead of time of, different pieces of the project, along with, not hard due dates, but those expectations, and then regular check-ins to talk about progress. Of course, it's not binding, but it's just really helpful for both parties to have, like we do with our students, clear expectations, progress towards that with a lot of support and encouragement along the way. So a really brief answer to your question on some helpful tips, but I find that to be really helpful in project management. Another quick point, just a huge support for everything that Dan presented, and that this is a really great onboard if you're taking your first steps and looking for external funding. This is just such a great onboarding opportunity to launch some of this work and to start to generate not only interest, but some of that data that can really be helpful in advocating for support on your campus, kind of that ROI, student savings, impact on students, and to really get at the end, ideally some student testimonials, and some student stories about how impactful this work is, because ultimately, that's what we're after, is that student success and support of our students, and that can really start to generate some of that interest and movement on campuses.
Thank you, everybody. Are there any other questions? Oh, Kim, you got some more stuff? Go ahead.
I was just going to say that administration likes numbers, and if there's a way to assess the products or
Kim, you went muted.
I was trying to raise my hand or lower my hand, and I muted myself.
Sorry.
So,
Go ahead.
So anyway, what I was saying was that administrators love numbers, and any way that we could find information from OER projects that will demonstrate student savings, student success, and especially student retention, they want to know about. That's important, and it's important to us as well, because we want our students to be able to afford to go to college, but also to complete their college experience.
Well, it is 12:59. I think that's a record for like ending on time. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for everybody's input with this. Thank you for the participants for all their questions. Obviously, if you have more questions, I'm sure you can reach out to, you know, Lauren or Kimberly or Daniel, or, you know, Cathy or I, or, you know, and that's a great part of it is that there's a huge network of support just from starting and that kind of stuff, which is huge, whether it's IACRL or Carly or what have you, and that kind of stuff. So again, I can't thank you enough for all your time and your input and sharing your experiences and your insight. And we'll go from there. So thank you again and have a great day.